Hey, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing whenever we record these shows, it's like we haven't chatted before, which we've been chatting for like 10 minutes. But
Yeah.
I guess we have to do that for you listeners out here, making it believe this is the first time we're chatting. But welcome to the show. Tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah. So my name is Jordan Bell. I run a digital ad agency called Agency Bell. I've been doing it for about 5 years, but my experience in advertising and agency type services about over a decade or so. I mostly I'm a builder type of agency owner. I kind of classify them as like kind of like the builders and engineers, the service people, the sales focused ones. I'm a true builder and a service type of person. So I'm really big. I built the agency really from a service perspective as a guy who is cutting his teeth in Google Ads on large accounts for a long time and getting really involved in the technology side of it and really enjoying the customized integrations. And so as I I ran an agency, or I helped run an agency as a junior partner for a little while after my last corporate role, like 7 years ago or something. And after that, I was teaching digital marketing courses, advertising courses, at coding academies and stuff in a couple colleges, and while also consulting and taking on like really not really like corporate, not a lot of corporate projects. I had a couple like Fortune 500 ones, but a lot of like hit the hammer, strike the from hammer to anvil, get the outcome type of in the trenches types of roles. I always enjoyed that. And the consulting gigs came from teaching adults and CMOs good to go digital and stuff like that. And then eventually the consultancy, it just kind of became more and more until it became time to start an agency again. I'm an individual agency owner. I don't have my wife and I work on it together, but I'm the primary, the principal on it. We haven't had done it before with like partners or multiple people, which is its own wild
Mhm.
ride of challenges and volatility in the past. But today, after working on a lot of different industries, we're currently focused primarily on large scale law firm projects. So think like multi-million dollar annual budgets for plaintiff driven. So you've got your mass tort, like product liability, lemon law, motor vehicle accidents, those kinds of things. We work with a lot of investors, so we're usually like one of the three or four people partner like companies at the table. You've got the large scale investment companies that are investing in plaintiff operations for law firms, and then the law firms who are the subject matter experts, and sometimes they have their own large scale budgets. And through that, it's sort of given us a nice corner where we can really build out larger scale programs that are really fully integrated into their CRMs. So the way I like to think about it is that there's a lot of lead generators out there, and we like to train the ad systems to optimize towards people who are more likely to take the desired final action. Which, if you're thinking about e-commerce, it's like optimizing to the conversion pixel, right? But in the lead generation world, you're optimizing to a person who's more likely to sign a contract retainer, or like if it was like a car dealership, it'd be like a person who's likely to buy the car at the end. So that created a massive burden of technology because you have to protect data pipelines. Because if you don't have perfect data flowing between a firm that's actually a firm or a company that's actually doing things inside their CRM, it can destroy the campaigns quickly. So it created a data requirement for ad data and CRM data and automation where Power Zapier users, and a bunch of other fun technology, because people contact our clients through chat and form and phone, and there's different levels of engagement in the pipeline. So it really encompasses all of like what I know from my background as an MBA, business modeling with them, and their own operations as companies, as clients. And so it goes far beyond like the advertising stuff, and it lets us stay up to date on the new tech that's out and really weaponizing that. So it's a massively difficult thing to do, and it's hard to, and it takes a while to onboard people in our team, but it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it. I'm where I want to be. So
That's awesome. Tell us about what's a big milestone that you've achieved since starting the agency that you're really proud of running your digital agency?
yeah, it used to be like I was. for a while, the guy that somebody knew that was really good at ads, and that didn't involve automated bidding inside like Google Ads, Bing, Facebook. It didn't. It involved a lot of manual work. I used to like calculate the exact bid that we would need at a common conversion rate in like a specific keyword or a targeting group, and like be able to pinpoint and say, okay, I need a negative 20% bid modifier. It was all manual. I mean, it was good. We'd calculate it, but I was teaching people to really go in there and move all the levers. And switching over to automation and machine learning was I was extremely stubborn about like not wanting to like take my hands off the levers. I'd be like, I don't want the computer to fly the plane. I want to fly it myself. Like you got to feel it differently, right? In that journey, I'm a risk taker in some ways, but risk averse in others. And trusting automation systems to think big picture strategically, like a person who's looking at many different factors, not just the ad system, which itself is a rocket ship, but looking at many different factors before making a decision inside an ad program when you're dealing with multi-million dollar budgets. That is one extremely hard to teach in collectively with as we bring on people internally, and we have a small team for that because of this. But also, it's like what logic rules inside ad systems are going to account for that. They don't make the technology that is designed specifically to solve the kinds of problems that we're trying to solve that would make it like we could not set it and forget it. But there's so much ad tech out there that is like, oh, you won't have to do as much. It'll tell you exactly what to do. And yet, no program was able to give us those exact winning solutions or even close. And so, learning not whether to go into machine learning and automation, but how, and how to and actually how to make it our competitive advantage the way we used it was a massive milestone for us. The way that we had to do that was we had to think about how to make sure that all the data that we wanted from disparate sources were not available from these static reports that would take hours to put together. I used to hand piece together all these like reports, but they had to be available in seconds, completely dynamic, so we could change date ranges and filters and stuff. Google's systems didn't even have, like, not all the views that are possible are actually available, and their own tools aren't even flexible enough for it. So we had to be able to recreate things like dynamic reports that are based in sheets that pull data from APIs. We had to create audit systems. And the audit systems are like, because we use this thing called offline conversions where a CRM action happens, and then a person has a unique click in the URL, and then we follow that, we connect it to the person, and it kind of and it updates Google when that person, they get, I call it a superhero cape, when one of 20 leads gets
Mhm.
a superhero cape, and that's the person you want more of. And then you have to immediately send that to Google. But that data pipeline is extremely fragile because there's so many things that can break that connection. And so learning how to audit that into a workflow, and we're dealing with thousands of leads per week, it becomes like, it can become doing it manually is an impossible job. I was up to like 3 or 4 in the morning every night just trying to manually like hand stitch these things together. And then eventually learning how to build operational workflows like that was a massive challenge. But when we finally like wrapped our heads around it and got through like these 40-step like Zap automations, that was a huge milestone. And we finally, in the biggest account that we finally just did a workflow where we had to treat it like an e-commerce setup, and where like multiple conversions could come from one
Mhm.
lead, like multiple cases. And that was extremely difficult because if not to go too into the weeds, but if you mess that up, you can't undo the damage to the account. And so building that entire thing to protect that meant that as soon as we committed to the machine learning aspect of our agency, it put a huge burden of things that we had to accomplish in order just to be successful. When you raise the bar that high, you have to be able to get over it, or you have to go back and lower the bar. So that
What?
was really big for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's amazing how you're trusting machine learning and AI in order to do things that used to do manually. So, what's life like now that you've turned over that stuff? Like, what are you
Mm.
able to focus on now?
Building the system better. Now it's a we couldn't focus on things before, like we couldn't we couldn't take like this satellite image view in seconds of anything in the campaign we want to see. So if I want to be able to see, you know, the income, like the income or age range inside a particular ad group or geographic location, and instantly get statistically significant data on a specific customized little conversion action like assigned retainer, um, up to the minute basically that they're doing it. We didn't have that ability before. To be able to say in 10 seconds we can get to that information and get a stat that's relevant became it changed the way that we could optimize campaigns with the level of granularity that we could get to, so that rather than 10 different decisions that could be made, we can isolate down to the 2 or 3 where at least 2 of them are highly likely to work. We're creating the science in the advertising world where there were so much more of there's a data science obviously to advertising that a lot of people don't realize until they, really get into it and look at the data. But we can able our decisions are far more likely to deliver the expected outcome. And when we're dealing with return on investment for like large scale investors, that becomes a competitive advantage for us because we become the company and they don't want to work with anybody else. So our retention is incredible at that point. We're talking about years, not months, when
Yeah.
with our retention now.
Now, how did you guys go about finding the right solution? Because there's lots of tools out there that says they do machine learning and AI, and
Mm.
there's always
Yeah.
a fuzzy thing between each, and then people are like, well, if you do this, then why can't the customer or the client go directly there,
Yeah.
and just bypass the agency? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. I when I used to teach, one of the first lessons that we did in a marketing course was about how the I would call it like the ninja digital marketer will have a set of skills like they'll be a creative thinker, there'll be kind of like a data and analytical thinker, and then there'll be a strategist as well. And is for all the kind of technology and the programs that we're using and the way that we bring them together, which is always cool. People are often surprised that I don't make a decision on technology and workflows until far later in the game than most others will. And the reason is because we're trying to pick a decision that we're not going to have to iterate on and change a bunch of stuff the next day or the next week. We're trying to make a decision that accounts for all the factors or as many of them as we can reasonably do, while allowing for variability afterwards and allowing us to have the flexibility. So when we do things like pulling data from like the tracking URL, we pull everything because we don't know whether we're going to need it yet. And oftentimes that's how we're able to like sort of save the day on scenarios is because we pulled it not knowing when we'd need it, but having it anyway. And so the one of the reasons why it's difficult for companies to execute on this is because in order for them to do this properly, properly in the sense of like what we're trying to achieve here, they have to be able to tap into a series of strategic decisions that come from first off knowledge of the market and what you can do, two, understanding how machine learning is working and how the system is looking at signals and having outcomes from that. We have to be able to know. We have to be able to predict based on experience and like vast amounts of data, the difference between asking a single qualifying question that's slightly different in its wording and what the user experience of the person is going to be like who's just did a search, which there's search psychology in there. And then following that process through, what kind of data does it produce, and how do the ad systems learn from it as the law firm or any other company is changing things in their CRM. There's a long pattern of factors before you can make really effective decisions. And it's unfortunately it creates kind of a tightrope because digital can be pretty unforgiving in a lot of ways. But it's what makes the work interesting because you can no longer just look at ad data and say, "Oh yeah, just make this next move." It doesn't work that way. It's a worthy challenge, but I also like to make it accessible though. We get on a call like we want to teach the firms how to think about this stuff because they'll be a better partner. They'll appreciate the fact that we're confident that nothing that we're doing yet or how we packaged it is proprietary. It's just really difficult to do, and it's really great for big outcomes and sustainable. So like we have $200 click keywords in some accounts, and Yet the click and that usually produces high click fraud rate, and we have one of the lowest click fraud rates I've ever seen on that on our most expensive account, because we've trained Google to avoid lawyer and marketer clicks that destroys budgets. So it's very hard without all the pieces together. You actually can't really do it very easily on your own, and that's why it's fun. But there's also
Yeah.
pretty high stakes at that point.
Yeah, I remember back in the day when I was first advertising on Overture. This was before
Mhm.
Google, and yeah, there was a bunch of click fraud because I know people. You would
Yeah.
just see the competitor and you go back and forth and be like, "Ooh, I charged this
Yeah.
guy $1."
Yeah. We have click fraud software, but it doesn't really it you can't it's like it's a whack-a-mole game, right?
It
And the
is.
bigger the bigger the ratio of people you don't want clicking to the ones you do, it can really mess up campaigns.
Yeah,
It's hard. We don't even take some like we won't even start some kinds of campaigns without a runway budget and without like certain factors in their tech and their operations being okay, because that's our story. If there are things that we can't reasonably control and they're not the right fit, then that becomes our story at that point. And most of the business was built off like our and my reputation, because we drive to success. You know, we aim for that outcome, and that was a level of commitment that it's very exhausting at times. But it you know how it is, like, and you
yeah,
don't always know if it's a click. It's like how does one person who types in the same keyword, how do you know the difference, right? It's you know it's happening, you just don't know where it is.
yeah. Let's switch focus a little bit because a little while ago we were talking about some things that you were doing that's really helping
Mhm.
you guys out, and kind of
Yeah.
going back to the basics. Talk a little bit
Mhm.
about that because I know your agency's doing really well. You guys are growing and scaling the agency fast, but why would you go back to the basics? Because a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're advanced. Why?"
Yeah.
And we're talking about very advanced stuff right now, that machine learning and all that. So why go
Mhm.
back to the basics?
Yeah, to kind of go into an example from earlier, I there is I've heard some good things from people that better explain it than I do. So I'm going to borrow one from a person who said this to me recently. Is that show me you can do long division before you get a calculator, right? Or I've always described it as like show me you can fly the plane before you get your like computer navigation, like on within like a 747 or a fighter jet. Like what are the stories that are amazing about crash landings with planes? Is that the pilot was able to land the plane in a river, right? And what computer is going to do that at that point? Is that a team's ability can fail fast when the plug is pulled? Can you get a candle in the dark and find your way through a problem? Or like have get out of the woods with the stars, right? And I've found that is so important, especially in like comprehension of the material, because it's so much technology that's available to us that it often becomes the solution in people's minds. And they forget that in order to be the most successful, the most efficiently, the most reliable, and achieve results when we set the bar high, is we have to be able to understand what we're doing in the context of what we're trying to achieve, our larger vision and goals, be able to talk about it as if you don't need the technology, but you can operate faster with it and you can be more efficient with it and get to better places. Because then you're talking about then you're living it. You're it's authentic. I'm not a great salesperson on the phone. I'm really not. I don't say all the right things, but I close the deals because for me it's authentic. I believe in it. I understand how it works. And that, interestingly, in the success and challenges of the agency that we've had, and in my own, when we won, it was because we understood it without technology and process and any kind of you know frameworks have been awesome. Like we've been looking at a lot of things, like whether like agile and adaptive would help us. EOS, OKRs, all those kinds of things are really coming to the forefront now. But at the end of the day, can you, regardless of what task management program that you have, can you throw things off the desk and then write down what outcomes you need to be able to achieve when you've got like 20 or 30 tasks due that week? Can you say this is why they're important, what they're going to achieve, its current place within the scope of the work? Because then no matter what you have, you can prioritize. You can do what matters. And that
Mhm.
every time we get away from that, we struggle. So I make the technology decisions and the operational policies and the workflows, all that kind of stuff is one of the last things that we do to get it right. but we have to have that comprehension in the beginning and the ability to operate in the dark with a candle and a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I always tell everybody, every quarter you should look at going back to the basics. I always use the story when I was playing college tennis and I was losing to a guy I should not have been losing to. And my tennis
Yeah,
coach was like, "Go back to the basics, Swank. Go back to the
yeah,
basics, dummy." And as soon as I stopped overthinking about my backswing or my follow through, I was like, "All right, I'm just gonna look at the ball and hit it."
yeah.
And
We
start
have
working.
yeah, that's great. I mean, and I'm a musician, so it's just kinda like someone playing doing their scales or doing their rudiments on a drum or something like that, right? Like, there's a reason those are important because those have to be second nature to build things on top of it. And it's why, whether it's in an ad campaign, right? We're looking at all, like, the data and the tech and, like, all the suggestions it has, but we're lost. Why are we lost? At the end of the day, what do we have to do? We have to say, "What is the business problem we're solving? Who are we reaching? How would we describe them demographically, behaviorally? Like when something is stopping in their newsfeed, like what would we say to them that would make them go, yeah, oh, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing this thing that I really want to do to
Mhm,
look at an ad that I didn't ask for. What's in it for me? Why do I care? Like, and there's that you get into user experience design at that point.
mhm,
User experience design and copywriting and really good targeting theory doesn't matter. It's timeless. It really is. It's the same skills we use to decide what we should write on a direct mail piece and where we should send it, and
yeah.
what kind of things to put on billboards. That skill is so still important. The best copywriting books are ancient, and yet we apply them differently today just based on the technology. And I'm a big believer in the traditional foundations there. If someone can talk me through that strategy, I can teach them how to use the tech. That's no problem.
Yeah.
But teaching the basics and teaching the foundations, that's the challenge.
Yeah, many years ago when I started helping agency owners and I was developing the playbook, I really thought about that of like what are the foundational systems that you need that will stand the test of time, that are the basics that you go back and forth, right? Like we were talking pre-show, like, how do we make sure we have that clarity? And then we get
Yeah,
the positioning and then the offering, and then we can start prospecting and doing sales. Like
yeah.
there's systematic things that you need to do that will always stand the test of time. And you just
Mhm.
got to think about what is that for your business and constantly going, are we making it simple? Are we on the right plan? And
Yeah.
then, adjust rather than just see the shiny red object and we're the cat trying to, swat it
Mhm.
down. Um,
Yeah.
Jordan, this has all been amazing. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the audience?
Um, you know, I think that the one thing I've been thinking a lot about is how, like, the systems, right? So, like, the agency playbook kind of systems, right? Like, one of the things that has really kind of helped and maybe kinda almost, like, saved us from, like, the peaks and valley, like, the days of where it's like, "Can we is this gonna work tomorrow? Did we set our sights too high?" Right? Like, I got married last year, we had a child, I started law school, like, I was back to the 16-hour day, like, it was hard, like, life was coming in. Also, we were both work from home parents, so that whole psychological challenge that happens, like, there's research about how people are getting, like, really beaten up, their mental health is tough right now. And one of the things that really has stood out to me is that it wasn't about getting to the new tech, and it wasn't even about something that would just be for agencies. So anyone that's kind of like manager running a business, major responsibilities like that, who is in charge of outcomes, it was really focusing on the vision, the designing the lifestyle, like what work I should be doing versus not doing, and then backing up from those outcomes, which I used to talk about all the time, but I wasn't taking those daily steps. I work with a CEO coach, and I found that some of those just involved setting the vision for myself as an agency owner. Now as we're kind of running the agency together is the with a child at home, is that we have to look at our life and our daily schedules and our vision and how that contributes and how we work together as a team. And so everyone's got their own version of this in the pandemic era, where then maybe they're in an office or not, maybe, but everything is a little bit more difficult these days, and it's changing constantly. And the thing you just talked about with the going back to basics, there are solid frameworks that protect any kind of business. And it doesn't mean that you have to use, like, I've always found, like, it doesn't mean you have to use one specific, like, method. It doesn't, no one method solves everything. It's the application of it. And I could not see it more clearly now, how there were things that we did not have in place in every department like that. Just the planning element, the vision and mission, the OKR style, like KPIs, like the qualitative and quantitative outcomes, and making sure that we are locking onto that. I mean, we've had times where we had people working two jobs, and we didn't know about it until, like, two full-time jobs, because that's what happened in advertising the pandemic era, right? And engineering and stuff like that. And so we learned a lot of hard lessons that way. But if we started with those things and then built operational structures in which the outcome was still those things, and we held accountability systems in place to that, that's the only thing that we feel now stands the test of time, because everything else is just, it's just which workflow we're using, which project management system. I'm agnostic to those things. They all kind of work the same way. But we've only really become safe and scalable from those basics and those frameworks and the things that we found worked for us. And then we made those our bottom line. Like, those are non-negotiables. And from there, honestly, like, I feel like even still, I'm getting back to waves of peace again, knowing that there's a big uphill battle to achieve the goals, but it's not scary anymore. And that's really the biggest thing that I think, even just from going into the new year, that we found.
That's awesome. Well, it's been great to have you on the show. It's been also great to get to know you over the past years of being in the mastermind and watching you guys'
Yeah.
growth, and watching you just constantly take one tackle and then get up and then tackle the next one. Because look, the agents running an agency is tough, and you're always going to get beat down. But it's about like moving forward and
Hmm.
moving forward in the right way, and be able to kind of sidetrack some of
Yeah.
the things coming at you. What's the agency website? People can go and check you guys out.
Sure. Agencybell.com.
Really hard. Very easy. If you guys can't
Yeah.
remember that, you guys got issues. But go check out Jordan's agency website. And thanks so much, Jordan, for coming on the show. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, comment. And if you want to be around other amazing agency owners like Jordan, where you can ask us any questions that you're struggling with, and we might be able to see the things a little bit differently so you guys can grow and scale your digital agency faster, go to digitalagencyelite.com and apply. And until next time, have a swank day.